And I was in at the set list last night, and it was the first time that I'd seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god!
It's trippy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool for comics too. It's really a show for comedians. The audience just gets to see it, but really the whole premise of the show, the whole vibe of the show, the whole ethos of the show really is about the comedians, just putting them in this unbelievably nerve-wracking situation. And providing a space for them where an audience is going to be there to support them and get inside the process with them, which is really fun and exciting because you don't really get to do that much as a comic.
I think we should explain how it works, yeah?
Yeah, Set List is a show where we basically give comedians a set list, which is a list of topics they'll be talking about, and they improvise a set. And the best way to really put it is Carlos Alazraqui, who's an American comedian, put it, I think, the best way when he said, asking a comedian to improvise an entire stand-up set in front of an audience is like asking a magician to do actual magic. It's kind of like that.
That's a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Because what I noticed last night was that there were eight comics last night on stage, and half of them were household names, and the other half weren't household names only because they haven't been in my household. And then one of them came, after he'd done his set, he came off stage and he was talking to a member in the audience who was a friend of his, and he said how terrifying it had been.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting for the comics because they haven't felt that kind of thing in a long time. Particularly big names, big stars, very successful comics who, you know, they pretty much. There are people who play the O2 Arena with no problem who have, you know, shit fits waiting to go on for set list. And that's the other really cool thing about it. And what we try to do on every show is have a real range of people of experience. Because it's a great equalizer. It doesn't matter how many times you sell out the O2. Can you do this right now in the moment is all that matters.
Because one of the comics last night, he said before he came on stage, didn't he? He said, someone made a comment to me about this, and then it was like I had to do it for the sake of my, what was it?
Yeah. It was he said something like, if you don't do it, then you don't have a dick.
Yeah, that's it. That's what
yeah, it's become like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of become a little bit of a, you know, why haven't you done it? Why aren't you doing it? What's wrong with you? It really is a big giant game of chicken. But of course, the secret is that you can do no wrong. I mean, the truth is that the audience is in a place where they're so deep inside the process for you. They see the topic you have to talk about at the exact same time that you see it for the first time. So there's a really interesting relationship. The audiences, they get how difficult it is. And it's really cool to watch the process. And the more people come back, I mean, as the show gets fans, people come back again and again because obviously it's a different experience every time. And they're becoming very, very savvy. They're becoming very understanding of people's processes and what's different about how this person's approaching and that person's approaching. And there's an enjoyment on a level that for a lot of comedians we don't really get that much. We hide all the hard work. We hide all the process. We try and make the finished product look all nice and shiny. And it's really cool to see it develop in front of your eyes and watch how different people do it.
I was going to say that.
And comedians get appreciated in a different way, too. You know, it's very funny to watch people who've never seen Paul Foote before see Paul Foote come off. And I mean, his journeys are so completely singular because Paul Foote is that kind of a performer. And they come off talking about Paul Foote in a way that is just so exciting because they're talking about him the way other comics talk about him.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. But one of the things that I noticed was that one of the things that is funny in that environment is that they themselves, the comics themselves, are actually funny when they're not even necessarily meaning to be.
Right, and that's one of the fun things is that you find, funny happens. That's the great thing as a comedian. You work your whole life to try and be in control of the funny, and then sometimes the funny just happens, and that's when you realize that you're a funny person. That's when you remember you're a funny person. And that's really what Setlist is about. It's about getting to the funny in you as opposed to your material. And as I said, the audience can make these sort of intuitive leaps and to realize that, the jokes aren't what's funny here. This person is what's funny here. And somebody else, they'll watch and they'll go, wow, they're actually writing really funny jokes right in front of us. It's incredible. And then somebody else will do it, and it'll be a mix of both. And it's just everybody has their own unique way of doing things, but the audience is in this place where they have a very different way of perceiving it and feeling it. That's the other thing that's cool, is it's kind of an emotional ride for the journey. It's like there's suspense, there's drama, there's redemption, there's all these great, things that you get from the best theater.
Yeah, well, I agree with all that, and also the comics are very naked, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's the other interesting thing, is that the comics really are vulnerable. I mean, you've taken away all their tools, and saying dance, monkey boy, and
watch you.
it's a little bit unnerving, but. As I said, it's just the way the show is handled, the way the audience is treated, and the sheer frightening aspect of, we often have the audience do it amongst themselves, just so they get an understanding of how hard it is just for 15 seconds to talk about some of these topics, some of which are surreal, some of which are sort of, basically titles for like any comic with their salt can make something funny out of this, and some are just these sort of random, weird, created verbs. It's so interesting and clever, and there's a real art to creating the set lists as well, which Troy has gotten very deep into, and so you never really know what to expect, So because of all of that, and because the audience recognizes how challenging so many of these topics are, and how you can't really even have one approach, they can tell that like everything that comes up is like, you got to start from scratch and figure out another way to approach this, and it makes for a different experience for the audience and the comedian. In fact, that's how I got involved with it. Troy, very early on when he started experimenting with the format, called me and said, "You want to do this show?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, what is this show again?" And he said, "I make up a set list, you make up the set in front of the audience." And I said, "When do you get it?" And he goes, "Oh, you get it on stage while you're there." And I just thought for a second and went, I am so there. And I went and seeing that first show, watching others on that first show that I did, and then doing it myself, it was just so clear to me that something extraordinary was going on for both the comedians and the audiences. So I went right backstage and I said to Troy, I said, "Boy, this needs to go around the world. Every comedian needs to feel this." And sure enough, that's what we started doing. We started working together and developing the show further and developing it for television, which has worked out really great. We're going to be on Sky Atlantic this fall. We took it around the world, and every place we go, it suddenly becomes this thing where every comedian wants to give it a shot. And it is really exciting and fun. As nerve-wracking as it is, it's also really exciting and fun, regardless of what happens. What's really funny is that when you do really well, you can't wait to get back up and have that rush again. And when you do really poorly, you can't wait to get back up and try and lick this thing. Yes. And so it really is like a drug.
Yeah.
Phil Jupitus calls it catnip for comedians.
Oh my God, he was fantastic.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. It's like like last year when we were doing it, Phil was just sort of starting. Phil was just starting to get back into stand up. He'd been doing his radio show for so long and not really focused on stand up, and he had made a commitment to focus on stand up again. And it was funny because last year, so many of the people that were Phil Jupitus fans were Phil Jupitus fans from telly and radio. Yeah. And they were blown away by how amazing he is as a comic, because when you see it in set list, it's just great.
Because I think he was the first act up last night.
Last night, yes, he was, yeah.
And he was a brilliant one to start with, because he, as you said, he demonstrates, doesn't he, the potential of the situation.
Yeah, and like somebody like who a lot of his fans, like I said, don't really know his stand-up or don't really know him primarily as a stand-up. They know him as a presenter or TV or radio personality. All of a sudden see him really as naked a comedian as you could be, and they're just blown away. So that's really fun.
Yeah. And he underwent a transformation, didn't he?
Yeah.
You could see him changing gear.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah, and it's funny to watch certain comedians over periods of time and watch them grow and shift and change, which is fun. But the interesting thing about setlist, Janie Godley describes it this way. She says, it's the only show that you can never really be sure you're getting any better at. because every moment is different. At any given moment, the comedy gods could just be on hiatus.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
But so, how does it compare with, for you personally, how does it compare with the work you've done in the green room?
Well, it's I think one of the reasons that I became so passionate about it was because it does fit in with a lot of the work I've been doing lately, which is about the other aspects of comedy that only a comedian really understands. In Green Room, we take you backstage with the comedians. In the Aristocrats, we take you backstage in a different fashion with the comedians to get a little bit into what the process is like. In the book I did with Dan Dion, Satiristas, it's all very personal interviews to sort of look at the broad range of the way comedians see the world, and they sometimes exist in contrast or in concert with each other. So you just sort of get this idea of how wide open the experience of comedy can be. And I think comedy it's kind of like a lifestyle. Like if you decide to be a musician for your life, you've made a lifestyle choice. And the same is true with comedy, except for the fact that there is a mindset that can be very, very liberating from being around comedy, and it just can kind of change the way you live in the world. It can kind of make you feel like all those things, all those demons of yours, or all those bizarre things that you don't understand, all those fears and insecurities and those feelings of isolation and alienation, they all fit very neatly in the world of comedy, and suddenly you develop a different relationship with them. So I've spent a lot of my most recent work in trying to express that other thing about comedy, that intangible about comedy, what it's like to be immersed in it, what it's like to be part of the experience. And as I said, Aristocrats, Satiristas, Green Room, they all sort of take you behind the scenes, they take you backstage, they take you behind the flats. But what Setlist does, I think, is it's even more interesting and further in that same kind of direction. It kind of takes you on stage with the comedian. I mean, the audiences really feel the struggle. They really feel the nervousness. It's almost like they're identifying on an emotional level the way you would identify with a character in a movie. They're like, God, boy, I hope you get out of this jam, you know?
You know what you were saying about how comedy changed your relationship with those feelings of isolation and other demons. How?
Well, most people take the pain and the alienation and all those other things of human existence, which I suppose are the human condition. They take all those things, all their fears, their difficult histories, their confusions, their embarrassments, whatever, and just try and put them in a closet and make sure they don't spill out onto the carpet and manage it all. Whereas what comedians do, really, and this is, I think, a fundamental distinction about what I mean about the mindset. So what comedians do is they don't fear that stuff. They just kind of get on it and ride it into the sunset. They tame it, and they have it work for them rather than be something that they fear or something that they have to guard against. And that just changes everything.
Changes control.
It changes everything. Control is one aspect, I mean, it gives you power where once you had weakness.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to stop it there because it's a good place to
Is
stop.
that good?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh, cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.